Where you should position the cleat on your cycling shoe depends on what sort of riding you do, what your pedaling action looks like, and what your cycling priorities are. In this video, we will take a close look at the best fore-aft, side-to-side, and rotational placement of your cleats. We will examine how to find and mark your first and fifth metatarsal bones on your cycling shoe to help you guide this placement. Let's start with fore-aft placement. Here, when I say cleat placement, what I really mean is the part of the cleat which will have the center of the pedal axis right underneath it when the shoe is held horizontal. You can see markings on most cleats where the center of the pedal axis will lie. Traditionally, cleats were positioned with the ball of the foot over the pedal axis. The acronym used was BOFOPA. I've seen one video online explaining that this originated from times when cycling shoes had soft leather rather than hard carbon soles. If you had a softer shoe, then having the ball of the foot on the center of the pedal made sense. This is the widest part of the foot and a tough and strong area to exert pressure with. Many experts agree that this position will still suit riders where pure acceleration is vital, such as sprinters, criterium racers, or cyclists tackling steep climbs who must be very reactive with sudden, short, maximal efforts. When the cleat is in this forward position, the speed and distance that the pedal moves when the calf muscle contracts is magnified. I think this cleat position will also suit riders who have naturally strong calf muscles. Perhaps because they have a background in sprint running or jumping sports. Maybe if you are a fast twitch fibre dominant athlete, it might be good for you also. However, there are many apparent downsides to having the cleat in the BOFOPA position. The calf has to work harder to move the pedal while still maintaining ankle control. As the calf muscle is heavily relied on, it will fatigue more quickly, loading up other muscles earlier, such as your quadriceps. It may also lead to overuse syndromes of the calf and Achilles tendon. With sustained efforts at higher intensities, this fatigued calf muscle will have less ability to control ankle motion, and we will start to see more heel drop through the pedal stroke. This will introduce greater instability to the ankle and subtalar joints, which reduces pedaling effectiveness. A dropped heel during the pedal stroke is often a sign of rider fatigue. The longer foot lever means that ankle range of motion is exaggerated, potentially causing saddle placement and other bike fit issues. Pressure is concentrated closer to the toes where the local nerves are more exposed and vulnerable, which can lead to tingling, numbness, and can contribute to Morton's neuroma. One GCN video, which I'll come back to later, discusses the possibility of sesamoiditis, which is inflammation of two bones under the ball of the foot. I've not seen this myself. Midway between the first and fifth metatarsal heads. This is probably the most popular fore-aft position to place cleats in currently in 2025. The majority of cycling science researchers and online bike fit commentators advocate this position. Let's have a look at the rationale for being here just a little back from the BOFOPA position. In cycling, the calf muscle is completely outgunned by the bigger muscles higher up, so it's really best suited to being a force transmitter and an ankle stabilizer rather than a force producer. Having the cleats further back creates a shorter foot lever to the pedal, reducing the force required from the calf muscle to transmit the large power output from the glutes and quads. This balances the contribution required from all of the leg muscles, as there is no longer a weak link in the chain. Over the course of a longer ride, the calf muscle can do a better job of keeping up with demand. The glutes and the quads will be preserved for longer because the calf muscle can help for longer. In the Bike Fit chapter of my cycling science textbook, Rodrigo Bini said that adjusting cleat fore-aft makes no difference to knee joint forces, short duration muscle activity, pedal forces, or oxygen uptake. So there is little to no downside to moving the cleats back to a position between the first and fifth metatarsal. This more rearward position will also minimize burning and tingling in the toes, as the nerves are less exposed and less likely to suffer from compression from the cleat or shoe. If you have excessive ankle motion while pedaling, either too much heel drop or increased toe point, moving the cleat back will negate the effect this has on the pedal stroke, making bike fit easier and also reducing the strain on the calf and Achilles tendon. Fifth metatarsal position. I saw a GCN video where the bike fitter physio Jake from Precise Performance suggested that the cleat be aligned with the ball of the little toe, the fifth metatarsal head, as this position was both strong and risk-free. This is the next rearward progression down the shoe, but I've not seen any other bike fitters suggest this as a standard position for road cycling. I don't usually recommend to a client to move their cleat quite this far back, and I've never deliberately tried having a cleat position this far back myself, but I can offer a word of caution. When I started riding a gravel bike a few years ago with a Shimano off-road shoe, I inadvertently ended up with a cleat position about 2 centimeters further back than what I was used to on my road shoes. This position felt awkward and weak and completely unstable under power. When I pushed hard on the pedals, especially when out of the saddle, I always felt like I was about to suddenly drop forward over the top of the pedal spindle into extreme toe point. I trialled the cleats where they were for about 6 months, but eventually I had to move them back to the position that I was used to because the ankle instability that I was feeling was just awful. What about a midfoot position? I've read Steve Hogg and I've seen Neil Stanbury and James Thomas all talking about the benefits of a midfoot cleat position. Essentially, this means moving the cleat back beyond the point that the normal bolt placement will allow, to the arch of the foot, requiring either new bolt holes to be drilled or a cleat plate extender to be used. There are also specific shoes available designed for this cleat position. I've placed the link to these below in the description, and it does take quite a leap of faith and a bit of an investment. The benefits are greatly reduced load on the calf and Achilles tendon, reduced ankle motion impact, and according to Stanbury, improved average pedaling torque. It seems to be a great option for time trialists, triathletes, audax riders, or any cyclists involved in long, steady-state riding. The downsides are significantly reduced acceleration ability, toe overlap against the front wheel because the foot is so much further forward on the pedal, and of course the challenges and costs of initial setup. Again, if you need sudden high intensity or out of the saddle efforts, this may not be a great choice for you. So, how do you set your cleat position? Remember that any changes that you make to your cleat fore-aft position will likely require a change to your saddle height and potentially even your saddle fore-aft as well. The further back you move your cleat on your shoe, the more you will need to lower your saddle as your leg is becoming functionally shorter. This may, however, be offset by changes to ankle stability and ankle motion that might make this equation a little bit more complex than you anticipate. I've made some videos on setting saddle height and setting saddle fore-aft. You can see the links here or check in the description below. How to find your first and fifth metatarsal bones for cleat placement. It's much easier to find your metatarsal bones on your bare foot than it is in your cycling shoe. The head of the first metatarsal is on the inside of your foot at the base of your big toe. You will see an outward curve here. Feel for the apex or center of this curve, mark this point, and then tape a small piece of matchstick vertically where your mark is. Then do the same on the outside of the foot for the head of the fifth metatarsal bone. Now carefully place your sock on and slide your foot into your cycling shoe. You should be able to easily feel the matchsticks and you can mark these locations on your shoe. Extend the marks vertically down to the sole and then across the base of the shoe. Now use these marks to help you get your cleat in the position that best suits you. Although the sole of your shoe may have its own markings to help with cleat placement, remember that they may not match up exactly with the anatomy of your foot. There are also some situations where you know where you want your cleat to go, but you can't achieve that exact position. I've made a video about that problem, which you can see here, or there's a link below in the description. One last thing, toe point during pedaling. If your foot is angled quite steeply down into plantar flexion during the power phase, the point at which the pedal axis loads your foot will be moved backwards, and the length of the foot as a lever will be reduced. If you pedal like this, you may need your cleat further forwards than you might otherwise expect. Side-to-side cleat position. The most commonly used cleats only allow a small side-to-side positioning range of about 6 millimeters. So the opportunity to make changes here are limited. I suggest start with the mid position of side-to-side range, which will hopefully position the cleat along the center line from the middle of the heel to the middle of the toe box. Moving the cleat inwards or outwards can help with local nerve compression problems and assist with toe tingling, numbness, and burning pain. If your knee moves inwards at the top of the pedal stroke, you can try moving your cleat outboard on your shoe to reduce your stance width. This usually creates a more vertical pedal action. However, taking this theory too far and moving the shoe as far inboard as possible can create problems with shoe strike against the chainstay or the crank arm, particularly if you ride with a lot of heel in, toe out, or if you have the cleat a long way forward on your shoe. If your knees flare out at the top of the pedal stroke, moving your cleats inboard on your shoe will create a wider stance width. And usually this will make your pedal action more vertical. If you need it, extra wide stance width can be created by using longer pedal spindles or pedal spacers. Bike fitters might recommend using pedal spacers where there is hip restriction or other factors which cause significant knee out at the top of the pedal stroke. However, I've tried this on a few clients where it actually made the knee out angle even worse. An extra wide stance also has implications for cornering, as the inside foot is more likely to strike the ground when the crank arm is at the bottom dead center position. Interestingly, one study I've seen showed that increasing the stance width had a negative impact on gross mechanical efficiency, cycling economy, and perceived comfort when compared to normal stance widths. So bear these potential performance losses in mind. Now we come to rotation. We want to set the rotation angle of the shoe above the cleat to match the preferred angulation of the foot. So how do you measure your preferred angle? Do you have a neutral stance, in-toeing or out-toeing? One method has the cyclist sitting on a high bench with the lower leg and feet hanging with gravity. I don't think this is a great technique because there is no contact of the foot to the ground and no muscle activation, so it really doesn't match the conditions on the bike. A good alternative is to look at jumping and landing, standing and marching, or sitting and marching. These are better options because now we have a loaded foot and leg. However, I think we can improve this test further by including a slight forward body lean so that hip rotation is factored in, and the real-world cycling position is matched even more closely. This is especially important if you like to ride in the drops or if you spend a lot of time getting your shoulders down low near your handlebars. A tight hip joint will cause the thigh to rotate outwards when the torso and knee get closer, and this is likely to result in a change in foot angle to compensate. Have your feet either side of a straight line running forwards on the floor and measure the preferred angle of the feet as a straight line between the center of your heel and the center of the second toe. You can then measure the angle between the line on the floor and the preferred foot position on the left and the right. Once we've got these foot angle measurements, we can translate them to the cleat position on the bike shoe. Many fitters advocate a 3-to-1 rule, where for every 3 degrees of preferred foot angle, we use 1 degree of rotation at the cleat. I'm not sure exactly where this formula comes from, and I've not seen research to back it up, but it does work in all but the most extreme cases. Also, be aware again that a maximum out-toeing cleat position may cause heel strike issues against the chainstay or the crank arm, particularly if you have large feet or a forward or outboard cleat position on your shoe. For precise cleat rotation measurement, you cannot go past the cleat key device. This is the simplest and the best foot angle measurement and cleat rotation setting tool I've ever seen. I've made a previous video on this awesome little tool, which you can see by clicking here, or there is also a link in the description below. If you're looking for a simple and free hack to get your cleat rotation dialed in and you've got Shimano or Look or any other cleat with a straight rear edge, Use some masking tape over the heel cup and the toe box and place a mark at the center point of both. Then place the sole of the shoe over the edge of a table near the corner and pull the shoe backwards until the rear edge of the cleat is flush with the table edge. Hold a ruler up to eyeball the line between the two marks on the shoe and note the angle made against the perpendicular edge of the table. How does this match against your preferred foot angle, taking into account the 3-to-1 rule? If you use speed play, you do not need to worry about rotating the cleat on the shoe, as the rotation angle can easily be set by using the 2 worm screws. Float. I've already made a video on how much cleat float you need and whether the amount of float will impact cycling performance or the likelihood of injury. In summary, more float is definitely better than less float for the vast majority of cyclists. More float will not rob you of power, but too little float will definitely increase your risk of injury. Summary. Unlike many elements of bike fit, playing around with your cleat position is relatively easy and cheap, so I encourage you to give it a go if you think that there are some gains to be made. Just make sure that you mark your current cleat position just in case the changes that you make do not agree with you. If you've made it to the end of this video, kudos to you. Please consider subscribing and hit the notifications bell so you'll get an alert when I post new content. And I love reading and responding to your comments too.